Okay, so I think we are live. Syscoin, Blockchain Foundry Syscoin AMA, attempt number 2. This time we have Jagging on video instead of just audio. Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. We're going to be picking up questions off of the Slido link that was posted to my Twitter the other day. It's also been posted to BCF and Syscoin Twitter a few times. And so without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started? So the first question we got is, what is the future of the, I'm sorry, there's some flashing going on there, I'll try to fix. What is the future of the bridge functionality if ETH 2.0 really solves the scalability issue ETH now has? Do you want to take that, Jag? You want me to take it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can expand on it, I'm sure. Yeah, thanks for joining, guys. So the ETH bridge is really just the beginning, right? It's the beginning of our implementation into the interoperability side of things. You know, we have ZDEG for scalability, and the bridge was to serve a use case for interoperability. We found that the network effect of Ethereum and the amount of utility that Ethereum provides, it was the highest from any other chain. Of course, Bitcoin serves as the largest community, but it doesn't have the same possibilities in terms of utility. It's a store of value mainly. The other thing is it's not really possible to bridge into Bitcoin as it is. Perhaps with their new bits, Mass and Taproot, there's some availability to do smart contract-like things. But to do the same type of thing, you need an open environment that you can store, do Turing-complete stuff, and be arbitrary in what you're trying to do. And Ethereum allowed for that. That's a good and a bad thing for Ethereum because you can do almost anything, and because of that, there's a lot of load on the chain. However, they are trying to solve their own scalability issues, and our solution provides them with an available alternative so that they can do cross-chain security. Something Vitalik has been really on about on Twitter, is saying, you know, cross-chain security is kind of the thing in terms of thinking about how interoperability is going to play out, and not this whole sidechain business, which involves trust.
Yeah, and just to expand on that further, you know, the functionality of the bridge, like Jag was mentioning, is not just targeted at solving Ethereum's scalability problem. It provides an opportunity to address that in terms of scalability, but it also is more coming from a decentralized finance sort of vision where people can leverage the unique value propositions that different blockchains bring to the ecosystem. In the case of Ethereum, that's Turing-complete smart contract execution. In the case of Syscoin, that's fast, cheap, and scalable value transfer. And so that value component of Syscoin will always be a unique value proposition that it can bring to Ethereum users, even if Ethereum 2.0, let's say, really does solve scalability issues. And furthermore, you know, the challenges with ETH 2.0 are pretty complex. And ETH 2.0 has been delayed a few times already. I know that community is sort of gathering around something called optimistic rollup in terms of scaling. But that still is in the sort of ratifying the proposal stages, and could take a while to see rolled out. So I do think
it's around 2 years away at least.
Yeah, which is a lot of time in this space. I mean, that's half the time that we've been in it. You know,
well, even then, if you think about what we're doing, we're very, very specific in our use case, and because we're specific in our use case, involving what Syscoin provides for utility, it could be optimized a lot further than if you were trying to do something general purpose and abstract. So what they're trying to do over at Ethereum is trying to create an abstract, scalable platform for everyone and everything. But we're focusing on being able to hold and spend your crypto. So if you're really focusing on spending your crypto, kind of like the Visa network of crypto, you can really hone in on the little nuances and problems involved and optimize in a way that Ethereum wouldn't make those trade-offs to do. So make a general purpose platform is not the same as making something very specific and targeting 90% of the business that we find is going to be on the chain. The rest of the stuff, like if you're doing, some cool stuff with smart contracts and IoT devices and smart city stuff, sure, you can pay a little bit of a fee to do it on Ethereum, but it's always going to be cheaper to do something that's very targeted and specific. It's going to be faster and cheaper and more efficient. So either way, like if it's not Syscoin, there's going to be some other chain that's going to provide smart the cross-chain security, but ours is kind of the first implementation to show the world it is possible without sacrificing security and retaining full decentralization.
Yep. Well, so next question here is, and we're also watching the chat, so if people have questions as we're talking, feel free to put them in the Periscope chat, and we'll do our best to address those. Otherwise, we're just going to be going off this list we have from the Slido link. So next one is, which projects will be the first to use the bridge? So we're working with a number of different projects to try to get them to start using the bridge. We're also working on a lot of documentation and sort of educational materials to enable ERC20 token contract owners with bridge functionality. I think that there's a lot of, I think AGX will probably be one of the first ones that Blockchain Foundry works very closely with that will end up on using the bridge. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to expose the bridge functionality through the mobile app to make it even easier for people to use. I would love to be able to have, your AGX SPT in your wallet, leverage some bridge functionality through the mobile interface, and a few hours later you have your AGX Ethereum ERC20 token, do stuff with it over on Ethereum, put it in a hardware wallet, whatever you want to do, and then you can bring it back over to Syscoin all through the mobile app. So that, I think, is probably the first use case I see. There are some specific projects that we are reaching out to try to get their contract owners to play with the bridge and see what they think. I'm not going to disclose any specifics there at the moment. And of course, Blockchain Foundry is going to be putting together some, let's call them like tech demos of the bridge involving existing ERC20 tokens. Particularly, I'm interested in focusing on stablecoins. So enabling the bridge with something like Tether or BUSD, which is Binance's USD stablecoin, and then providing support for those tokens in the actual Syscoin Spark mobile wallet so that you can leverage ZDAG functionality with something like Tether or BUSD is a tech demo that I think you'll be seeing from Blockchain Foundry in next week or two, depending on sort of internal timelines. So we are working with some Ethereum projects to get them up on the bridge. You'll hear more about them as they are stood up on the bridge. And we're hoping that their feedback from using the bridge will help us to improve it and make it more usable for other ERC20 devs. As a dApp dev accustomed to ERC20, please explain what worthwhile utility I could gain by using the Syscoin bridge. Do you want to talk to that, Jag, or I can talk to it too?
Yeah, go ahead.
So a good example of what an ERC20 token could gain from using the Syscoin bridge, and I'll use the stablecoin example again because that's probably the most relevant one here, is when you have ERC20 pure value transfers happening on Ethereum, you're paying more for those value transfers and you're exposing your dApp's functionality to the limitations of Ethereum scalability. So if you remember what happened back in, I think it was 2017 or early 2018, a very popular dApp emerged on Ethereum's blockchain called CryptoKitties, and it generated so much transactional activity that it actually filled up the blocks on Ethereum and ground the network to a halt for several hours, and transactions basically weren't moving. What Syscoin allows you to do is avoid that problem. So if the bridge had existed back then, and you had moved some of your supply over to Syscoin, when Ethereum's blockchain locked up because of that dApp scaling out of control, you'd be fine. And furthermore, you would be having cheaper transactions whether or not Ethereum's blocks were full, because transactions on Syscoin are inherently cheaper than Ethereum's, and they're faster. And so those are the real three tenets of value proposition of the bridge for ERC20 token holders, right? It is, you are not subject to the scaling limitations of Ethereum anymore. Your transactions are cheaper, your transactions are faster, and something that, some people care about, but some people don't understand is your transactions are more secure as well. Because in Syscoin's model, your transactions are backed by Bitcoin's proof of work model, rather than Ethereum's model, which is moving to proof of stake. And so it also gives dApp developers on the Ethereum side the choice of the security model they would prefer their tokens to operate under. Because proof of stake, especially sharding at the scale that Ethereum is talking about in 2.0, is largely untested, and there's nothing like that out there in the wild today, users may want to bridge over some of their tokens to Syscoin to mitigate possible unknowns that will come from that implementation until it's stabilized on mainnet, and then they can bridge them back, or they can keep them on Syscoin and do things with them over there. So there's a few different value propositions for ERC20 dApp devs, and those are a few. Anything I missed, Jack?
No, that's good.
Cool. Will you continue in any way with the BlockUSign project? We definitely want to continue with the BlockUSign project. I think it's a very valuable project. We made a lot of progress on it and sort of shelved it temporarily. The idea there is that we will revive it at some point in the future. We're doing a lot of work with clients right now that is in the identity space, and it's particularly leveraging things like the decentralized identifiers that we've worked with the Decentralized Identity Foundation to help develop a spec around. It's also using something called verifiable credentials, which go hand in hand with DIDs. And why is all that important? That's important because the root of the BlockUSign project is identities signing off on documents and ledgering all of that activity on the blockchain. So the beginning of it is having an identity on a blockchain, and that's where DIDs and verifiable credentials come into play. So as we make more progress with our clients in that space, my hope is that we can integrate some of that work into BlockUSign and make it a more motivating product as a whole, because we do have to remember that when we're talking about BlockUSign, it's very cool that you can sign documents on the blockchain, but there are big, established, centralized competitors that we would have to go up against to productize that and take it to market. And of course, I'm talking about DocuSign. DocuSign also has an ERC20-based signing solution. And so really in order for a BlockUSign from Blockchain Foundry to be reasonably competitive, in my opinion, it has to have more than just blockchain-based document signing. And that's where blockchain-based identities and identities that conform to a specification that we internally know multiple enterprise organizations are adopting, that's where we get ahead of someone like DocuSign and their purely ERC20-based implementation. So that's just some thinking on where, what the future for that product kind of holds. Definitely not something that we've forgotten about. It's just kind of on the shelf for now, and will be revived when the time is right. Block Nugget, cut that red tape and tell us about a new client. We are working on that. Unfortunately, because of the public nature of our company, I can't say more than that. But we will have news coming out about that on the official sort of CSE channels, and then once it's out there, we can dive into more details about what we're doing with them. It is a really exciting client, though, and I can say that it is around an identity use case, and I'm excited to be able to work in that space. Learn more about the Hyperledger sort of components of that space, and then be able to take that knowledge and integrate it with something like BlockUSign. Which Sys Analytics Playground use cases will be the most popular? How can it help developers in the industry? What do you think? We talked about this a little bit on the last AMA that didn't work. I'm not sure what this Sys Analytics Playground thing is. Maybe it's something I missed from community dev or something the community put together. Or maybe I just know it by a different name, which is totally possible. So I'm going to pass on this one, but if someone knows what that is, I'm happy to add more color there. So Mr. Stipend from the AMA chat asked, no block partnership, any new updates worth mentioning? Nothing new worth mentioning there. They're still working through some regulatory challenges, so that project's been delayed rather significantly due to those challenges. We're hoping that we can pick it up soon, but it's really kind of stuck in a legal regulatory spot at the moment. Please talk about your architecture and consensus mechanism. Most cross-chain solutions are distributed proof of stake or proof of stake at base layer. Why do you think proof of work is a good idea here? Sounds like it's perfect for you, Jack.
Yeah, and again, for anyone that just joined in, feel free. We are listening in on questions on the BCF channel Discord. So Syscoin's Discord, if you can head over to syscoin.org, there's a join Discord button, and then get through to the introductory plus press yes to make sure you're not a bot, and hashtag BCF is the channel. So if you want to join in on asking questions to us, we're more than happy to take them. Just jump over there and ask your questions. We're just reading off of questions that people posted in, so we'll continue on. The architecture is really first and foremost, it's centered around decentralization. So proof of work and the Nakamoto consensus mechanism has proven to be really the only real decentralized approach to solving finance in a way where you can be your own bank, where you can, there's going to be insurance models and then trusted banking services. Existing banking services are probably going to offer custody, those type of things. But in the end, we found that the reason why we're here is because of the power of being able to be decentralized and no one can take control. If you start to say, hey, I want higher TPS though, I want more scalability, so I'm going to sacrifice some of that decentralization, then you start to get to the core, you start to ruin the core proposition of what you're even all about. The way that I think it should be is kind of like a Bitcoin model where you remain decentralized at the base layer, and anything you do on top for scalability, interoperability, all that stuff should be within mind, having the base layer decentralized and everything building on top to add those value propositions where people have a choice whether they want to have that convenient feature for that time, and then go back to the base as the store of value, as a unit of account and utility, and being able to hold it without worrying about someone intervening. So what I mean by that is, when we started Syscoin, we merged mine with Bitcoin, and we're 100% compliant with the Bitcoin code base. It's proof of work based, it's decentralized. Some people might say it's not because of the mining. I know some of the people on Twitter, like Eamon Gunsur, he's coming up with his own blockchain design saying proof of work isn't secure. It's that's not true. The mining costs are now lower than ever. The costs to create ASICs have bottomed out to a point where it's going to become commoditized. The chips aren't getting any smaller. The boards aren't getting any smaller. You can't put that algorithm on something smaller and smaller. There's no more research happening in that space. Instead, it's becoming horizontally expanded to the commercial and the enterprise side of things. So you'll see embedded devices with miners. So it's going to become 100% decentralized in a way the vision was officially sought out to be spread across the world. And there's going to be more and more power dedicated to it. So that doesn't mean that there's going to be large power plants, but it'll be spread out horizontally. So when you talk about the base layer being horizontally scalable in terms of security, then you can think about convenience layers on top. And ZDAG is a convenience layer offered to merchants in a way where if you want to opt in on the policy, on the security, which is less than obviously getting into a block. We're talking about mempool inclusion of transactions in your business. Then you start to make trade-offs, but again, you're not degrading your baseline security and performance where you're going to say, I'm going to give up on security forever. You're just giving up security for that transaction under $100 or under $500, and then you're resolving back to the typical Bitcoin security model. Whereas if you have DPoS and you have these other algorithms, your base layer is not decentralized. So anything you do on top is going to take that convenience, but there's nowhere to go when your convenience is done and you want your store of value again. There's nowhere to go. The base layer is not 100% decentralized. So that's what scares me about Ethereum's next proposal to move over to proof of stake. I get where they're coming from. They have no choice. Their block times are static, the block size are static, and there's more and more demand. But that's where we offer the cross-chain security. There's an out. So if Syscoin may become the base layer for those value transfers, it could offer a viable alternative for Ethereum, the vision of Ethereum to live on, where there's an option for the base layer to be decentralized through Syscoin, and now you can offer the utility and convenience packages that Ethereum offers. So that's the way I see it. To decouple the convenience from the base, but you need to be able to interop between them seamlessly. So people need to be able to go in and out.
Well, I think there's also like some, in addition to what you mentioned, right, that there are some risks to DPoS systems in general. Like look at EOS, and they've got like vote trading and selling going on between their whatever they're called super nodes or validator, the 21 nodes that basically control their network and are supposed to give them higher throughput because it's 21 nodes that are incentivized to run in crazy hardware or something like that. But they're just like trading, they're like buying and selling votes behind the scenes between these 21 nodes, like that is a risk that you see in a distributed proof of stake system that you won't see in a proof of work system because there aren't anointed nodes. It's just nodes based on proof of work, mining power, and that's fundamentally different, right?
Having everyone validate everything, you can't get any more or any. You can't get any less you can get decentralized just by having everyone verify everything, and anything less than that is less secure by design, and that opens up theoretical attacks. So that vote buying and selling is just a common. It's a side effect of the fact that there's only a few nodes and they control. Yes, you get speed, but do you really win out when you can do CDEG transactions as fast or even faster when it's almost the same security model? I would guess that the DPO security model and the ZDEG security model, maybe ZDEG is even better because you can't do any vote buying. You can, I guess, try to convince miners to try to include your transaction in double spends. But as a merchant, you always see that, and you'll be like, you know what, those people aren't good. I'm never going to accept those transactions in real time from those people. And that way, you can literally, the public is serving as honest users, and you're accepting from the public, and there's no problem. So, yeah, I think having that choice in between the base layer and the convenience layer is really just ZDEG stuff and Syscoin base layer. That same concept applies to the Syscoin layer and Ethereum. But think of it the same way. ZDEG is kind of a bolt-on on top of the Syscoin core logic, which is kind of Bitcoin. And then Ethereum is a bolt-on on top of Syscoin, extending the utility, but you can interoperate. There's a little bit of a time delay between those two because there's two different chains, but think about it logically the same way. The Ethereum chain is extending Syscoin, and the ZDEG is extending the base Syscoin layer. The base Syscoin layer, 100% decentralized. It's proof of work, and it's spread out amongst miners. There's no barrier of entry or anything like that.
Cool. So next one here, we'll probably do, let's see, we're at the 25-minute mark here, so let's do like 2 or 3 more, and then we'll wrap it up. So this one's from Block Nugget. Are stablecoins such as USDC, USDT, TUSD, and BUSD going to use the bridge? The answer there is 100%. That's, for me, one of the things I'm most excited about, and something that Blockchain Foundry has been doing a lot of work around, essentially, is like I mentioned earlier in the stream, there's a way for non-contract owners to enable the bridge for certain ERC20 tokens. And so we plan on enabling the bridge for some of the stablecoins mentioned here so that we can enable them with ZDAG to provide a tech demo of not only the speeds that the Syscoin network can provide to these tokens, because I mean, imagine using USDC or USDT in like a Starbucks. That is something that through the bridge and with Syscoin, we can now enable. And with the latest version of the AGX Pay wallet, we've actually enabled ZDAG in the mobile context, which again is super exciting for me because we've had ZDAG for probably 2.5 years or so now. Don't quote me on that, roughly. And this is the first time we've really gotten it that close to its target use case. To date, it's been relegated to desktop, and I don't know how many of you take your desktop to Starbucks to buy a coffee, but I don't. So it was cool to see it working in desktop, but it was still really far away from the target use case, which is being able to use that tech at a Starbucks counter when I'm checking out. Now that we've integrated it into the mobile app, and that's currently in the testing phase, it is closer than ever to its target use case, and that's super exciting for me. Coupled with the fact that now we have this awesome bridge technology where we can bring things like a stablecoin US dollar that's been proven to work, like any of the ones mentioned, and provide utility for that in the context of real-world value transfer. That to me is something that is really exciting and is sort of the definition of a decentralized finance ecosystem, right? Stuff that started on Ethereum in order to prove that there is an auditable process for minting these stable coins, and they're backed by some bank account balances. Through the bridge now enables using that value in the real world at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, etc. And so, I think that you're going to see more of that over 2020. That is what the decentralized finance vision is all about. And so, definitely going to use the bridge. And sort of to that effect, Blockchain Foundry has been working to enable ZDAG functionality for ERC20 tokens more easily. Like, yes, we have ZDAG in some of the properties that we've developed as Blockchain Foundry, but we want all developers to be able to leverage the power of ZDAG with just like a few clicks. You shouldn't have to deeply understand the Syscoin core code or the RPC in order to use ZDAG. And so we have worked to put together a library that we're calling Syscoin WebSocket, and it's a client and a server, and it basically is a system for surfacing ZDAG information. So as a developer of a wallet or an application or a website, if you want to leverage ZDAG in that application, you can use the Syscoin WebSocket server that Blockchain Foundry will run, or you can deploy your own, and then you write about 5 lines of client code, and you can start leveraging ZDAG. And so that, I think, is something that will be released within the next week or two. We're really close to being done with it. If you poke around the right organizations on GitHub, you'll see the kind of the alpha stages of Syscoin WebSocket and Syscoin WebSocket Client. We'll officially kind of share them with the community once we've done a little bit more testing on them. But really exciting. And part of Syscoin WebSocket Client, too, is it provides an AngularX service for accessing this information, so you can use it as a raw vanilla JavaScript client for interacting with ZDAG information, or you can integrate it into any AngularX application to do the same stuff. And we are consuming our own dog food here in that we are using these exact libraries in our mobile properties. So we really try to make them easy to use and quick to instantiate. So it'll be cool to see people getting exposure to how to set up their ERC20 tokens on the bridge, at the same time getting a tool set that enables them with ZDAG functionality, and seeing where they go with all that stuff. What are your plans to enable support for Sys in other hardware wallets besides Ledger, i.e. what's going on with Arcos Safety? We're not going to focus on the Arcos Safety here, but I think that, Jag, you can probably talk to hardware wallets more in general and the work that's going on with like BB and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm actually doing some of the plumbing to create an infrastructure for mobile, web, desktop, all these things to hit an API, a backend that is serving information to all types of clients. And Ledger and Trezor, they require specific API calls. The way that they work is they store seed phrases, and from there they store an XPub key, which is standard across the industry. XPub keys are interesting in that they're kind of like your master key. It's public. You probably don't want to give it out to people, but it's still something where you start as a base key and then you derive keys off top of that. So typically before, say, Bitcoin 0.16, everyone used to have a wallet.dat, and they'd have 1,000 keys in there because every time you do a transaction, a new key gets created. Every new key gets put into the file synchronously, and it gets stored in like a list. and so your wallet.dat grows and grows. If you have 1,000 or 10,000 entries, it's got to track all 10,000. Well, with this new type of technology with cryptography, we can actually have only one private key or one seed phrase, which is 12 or 15 words or whatever. It's one private key controlling all of those keys under it, kind of like a hierarchy. So because of that, the actual hardware devices just store one key, and then they derive all the keys under that, all of the keys, and they can watch for addresses under that to have some balance, and then they are able to show those balances. So the APIs, there's not many APIs to support XPub and derivations on that in a performant way. So there's a few commercial ones, not many open source ones. Blockbook is one where they're open to integrating other coins, and they also support XPub, and it's fairly performant, written in Go. So I've been taking up Go and implementing not only Syscoin but the Syscoin asset layer on top in a way that's conformant with the XPub APIs as well as the normal APIs of getting history. And so we have our Explorer right now, which is an API, but it will transition to Blockbook. And where that will go is we'll be able to do rich interfaces that will interface to your hardware device right in our web wallets and potentially mobile wallets, right?
Well, it also means better security too, right? Because like right now, our Explorer API is implemented in a way that assumes a single address sort of implementation. Some of that is for ease of use because the community that wallet was developed for is not familiar with all of this cryptography stuff Jag mentioned, and they expect to be able to tell their friends to send to one address and just always use that one address. As we look to push that further, we want to make sure that users have the option of increased privacy by generating unique addresses for each transaction if they so choose. And that is what Blockbook helps to enable. It also helps to enable, like Jag was mentioning, an industry standard backend for wallet integrations. And that extends from web to mobile to hardware. And so a great example of that is something like Trust Wallet requires a Blockbook implementation for your specific blockchain in order for them to add any tokens of yours to Trust Wallet. So if you want to see Syscoin on Trust Wallet, they told us you got to have a Blockbook implementation. So now we have that, and Jag has been taking that further as well by extending it with SPT information, with the goal of being able to support both Syscoin and SPTs on these platforms that require a Blockbook backend. And I think we're pretty close there, Jag.
Yeah, it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
The cool thing about these type of APIs is it gives you a richer experience. Like, for example, right now, most crypto projects, you log into their wallets and you can see a flat list, right? But you can't break those lists down to say, I want to see, like, my bank account. I want to see the last month's history. I want to break it down by every day, how many transactions I've done every day, and download that statement. Now you can actually do these lists in real time in an important way because they're indexed as such, right? So you can actually break down to say, I'd like to see my last years of information. I'll page it by every 10 entries, and I will show every 4 hours and group transactions in 4 hours. I want to see how much money moved every 4 hours for the last year or every month. Or I'll look last February to see what happened last February. So it's really, really hard to do those type of APIs without thinking holistically from top down. And so, these guys have taken the Insight API, which is deprecated from BitPay. We know that BitPay transitioned to Bitcoin Cash and all those other altcoins. So BitPay phased out, and Blockbook took the mantle and made a Insight compatible interface, but then thought, hey, we can make this a lot better. So they made another version of version 2, and we've been integrating into version 2, and the Ledger and the Trezor backends are kind of using these APIs. So yes, we can integrate natively right into their wallets, which we will be doing, but we will also be allowing for our own rich interfaces to be created to serve as a multi-hardware wallet kind of front end. So if you want to see something like this in the wild, there's only one thing that I know. It's blockchain.info's wallet. They have, I think, something called Lockbox, which is essentially just a rebranded ledger. But you can actually log in through a web wallet and access and control your funds through a hardware wallet. So they're saying that's a cross between convenience and security, because you still own your keys, you still have to press a button if a transaction is to happen, but the gateway is a web portal, right, on the web. So essentially the same type of idea, but being able to do more than just Ledger. You may have Trezor or some other devices, whatever JavaScript APIs we can find.
Cool. Yeah, and so we'll do one more here. Let's see. This one seems like a good one to end on. What is required to become a bridge validator? Do I need a top 100 wallet and to be voted in by stakers? Is this role different than in other interop platforms? I'll take a stab at this one. So I'm not going to speak how this role may be different from other interop platforms, because there are so many that are being developed and their methodologies are so varied that it wouldn't be worth the time to try to compare. I can say that what is required to become a bridge validator is 3 Ethereum to be a validator. What's really recommended is more like 9 Ethereum to both validate and to challenge invalid superblocks, basically is what they're called. Superblocks are essentially a collection of an hour worth of blocks on the Syscoin blockchain, put into a single superblock and then anchored on Ethereum so that Ethereum has cognizance of Syscoin's blockchain data. And that's how the bridge is enabled based on that data. And so all that's required to become a bridge validator is really 3 Ethereum plus maybe like 1 more Ethereum for a year's worth of block submission, so like 4. But really, again, we recommend 9 and running the agent running as a submitter and as a challenger is that the terminology is in our ecosystem. Because if you run that's how you maximize your incentive, because for being a submitter, you'll earn fees for the bridge transactions within the super blocks that you submit, and we expect those fees to go up as the bridge gains more traction. Being an agent being a challenger allows you to inspect super blocks that are being submitted by other submitters, and if the data in there does not match your local Syscoin blockchain, you can do what's called a challenge, or basically you get into a game with the submitter where you both submit block headers to validate which actor is truthful, and then the one who's not truthful will lose the battle and they'll lose their Ethereum bond. And so as a challenger, you can help protect the super blockchain, earn up to 3 Ethereum at a time for those challenges. As a submitter, you can help build the super blockchain and earn a fee for any transactions contained within the super blocks you submit. So you don't need to be a top 100 wallet. You don't need to be voted in by anybody. You just need to put up some Ethereum as a bond and stand up the agent, and we have a lot of documentation in terms of how that all works. And yeah, anyone can run an agent. Governance does not determine who qualifies. 100% open participation. Okay, well, I think that'll be it for this session. We'll probably have another one of these in about a month. Looks like the format has worked out a lot better this time, so we'll try to continue to improve that. We also recorded this, so you'll be able to catch it on YouTube later today or tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.